Today, let's talk about one of the most fascinating figures from 18th century India. He was a ruler, an innovator, a fierce opponent of the British Empire, and a man who went by one of the coolest nicknames in history, Tipu Sultan.
I mean, that name just paints a picture, doesn't it? The Tiger of Mysore. So the big question is, why? What did he do to earn a title that powerful? Well, as you're about to see, it's not as simple as you might think.
Okay, so there are a few ideas floating around. One is a straight-up legend, that he once fought a tiger with nothing but a dagger and won. Another reason is a bit more obvious. The tiger was all over his royal symbols and flags. But the reason that really sticks, the one that his enemies would have agreed with, it was his sheer ferocity and brilliance on the battlefield. The man fought like a tiger.
To really get who the warrior was, you have to understand where he came from. And his story really starts with his father, a man with some serious ambition.
See, Tipu wasn't exactly born into a long, ancient line of kings. His dad, Hyder Ali, was actually a military officer who fought his way up the ranks and eventually seized power, making himself the ruler of the kingdom of Mysore. So from day one, Tipu learned that power wasn't just inherited, it was something you had to take.
And his education? Whoa, it was intense, designed to make him a leader in every possible way. He was learning military strategy directly from French officers, studying everything from science to Islamic law, and, of course, mastering swordsmanship. But probably the most important class he ever took was just watching his dad navigate the treacherous world of politics. This wasn't just an education, it was a blueprint for how to build a modern state that could take on an empire. And trust me, he was going to need every single bit of that training because his entire life was about to be dominated by one relentless conflict against a new global superpower.
We're talking about the Anglo-Mysore Wars. Not one, but 4 massive wars against the British East India Company. This wasn't just a border skirmish. This was a decades-long struggle for the future of southern India.
And Tipu proved he was a force to be reckoned with right away. In 1782, during the Second War, he absolutely annihilated a British force led by a Colonel John Brathwaite. This wasn't just a win, it was a statement. It sent shockwaves through the British ranks and cemented his reputation as a commander you did not want to face.
But the winds of war can shift in an instant. The Third Anglo-Mysore War, well, that one ended in a crushing defeat that nearly destroyed everything his family had built. The price he had to pay for peace was just unbelievably harsh. The Treaty of Seringapatam made him give up half his kingdom and pay an insane amount of money. But here's the real gut punch. He had to surrender 2 of his young sons as hostages to the British. They were held until the debt was fully paid. Can you imagine?
You'd think that would break a man, but for Tipu, it just hardened his resolve. The final showdown, the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War, was inevitable. On May 4th, 1799, the British finally stormed his capital city. And Tipu Sultan, the Tiger of Mysore, died exactly as you'd expect, in the heat of battle, defending his kingdom to his very last breath.
But here's the thing. If you only remember Tipu as a warrior, you're missing a huge part of his story. He was also a modernizer, an administrator, and a real innovator. And all of that was part of his grand plan to build a powerful, self-sufficient state that could resist anyone.
Yeah, he wasn't just thinking about war. He introduced a completely new tax system, created new kinds of coins, and even developed a brand new calendar. These weren't just random changes. They were smart moves to centralize his government, boost the economy, and fund his modern army. And this is where it gets really interesting. His father had used rockets, sure, but Tipu perfected them. These things were a total game changer. We're talking iron tubes packed with gunpowder, attached to long bamboo sticks for stability. They were basically the 18th century's version of artillery rockets. And they were terrifyingly effective. So much so that when the British captured some, they took them back to England to reverse engineer them. And that research directly led to the British creating their own Congreve rocket, which they then used in the Napoleonic Wars. It's a crazy twist, right? His own invention was adopted and used by his greatest enemy. After his death, when the British were looting his palace, they found something absolutely unbelievable. It was a life-sized mechanical wooden tiger in the act of mauling a British soldier. And it had a handle you could turn, which made it let out a tiger's growl and a man's dying shriek.
It is a stunning, almost terrifying symbol of his deep-seated defiance. So when you put it all together, the wars, the reforms, the rockets, that mechanical tiger, how should we remember Tipu Sultan? Well, like a lot of powerful historical figures, his legacy is, let's just say it's pretty complicated. On the one hand, he's hailed as a national hero, a freedom fighter who resisted British colonialism and pioneered new technology. But there's another side to the story. He's also remembered as a cruel conqueror who was brutal to neighboring kingdoms and absolutely ruthless to his enemies. And the truth is, both of these views have roots in his actual actions.
So what's the final verdict? Was he a freedom fighter way ahead of his time? A brutal tyrant? Or maybe something more complex? A product of a violent, chaotic world, just fighting to survive with every tool he had? The one thing we know for sure is that the Tiger of Mysore remains as fierce and controversial in history as he ever was in life. So I'll leave you with this. What do you think?